And to Nigeria, where President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has congratulated the president and chief executive officer of Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, on the award of the National Order of the Lion by President Macky Sall of Senegal. The award, which is the highest order in Senegal, will be bestowed on the foremost businessman today, February the 2nd. President Tinubu applauded Dangote for his enterprise and ingenuity, creating jobs and opportunities for many in Nigeria and across West Africa.
All right, business anchor Boason Omofaye joins us for more on these stories. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.
Thank God it's a Friday.
Oh, definitely. Okay, let's talk China. You know, the country's economic slowdown is likely to persist in the coming years. What more can you tell us about this?
I think the underbelly of this is the construction and the housing sector, and this sector had been the one that had taken China up from the bottom all the way to where it is right now. A major contributor. The housing sector is about 1/4 of the country's GDP, and that tells you that if you take care of the housing sector, which of course has a whole lot of value chain. Cement, construction, iron and rod, water, painting, the entire building materials, including engineering in terms of putting elevators in these high-rise buildings, including electricity, and every other thing you can put in there. It's a whole economic backbone. So you can see why construction for urban dwellers and for corporate offices, corporate users are taking that very big leap, and it's very important. You've seen how the real estate sector had spread across China, not just in Beijing or the major cities, but across the country, manner of speaking, as the country moves to continue to do more around special economic centers and things of that and other such economic part of the economy. So it makes a whole lot. So when the property sector, including the, what do you call it? Including the construction sector, gets hit, and you have a whole lot of debt in that sector because it was all basically led by the private sector, then you understand why the economy is being forecast to slow down. Then at the heart of this, however, is Evergrande. Evergrande debt, we'll talk about $300 billion US. Remember, we're discussing this just a few days earlier this week. So you've got to deal with the Evergrande problem. You've got to deal with the slowdown as well that we've seen in the Chinese economy over the last few years. The years or the decades of the double-digit GDP growth is now slowing down to the top middle part of the single GDP level, 6-7%, thereabout. China was running 10% or plus over many years. So we need China to get back to, if is declining in the Chinese economy by the GDP affects the whole world. In a manner of speaking, those who are holding investment and assets of those housing and property market will have to be impacted. The financial services, the banks, and others are impacted. Then, of course, you have people as well. So the level of economic demand of growth, whether it is in iron ore, whether it's in other basic resources that goes into industrial manufacturing, as well as construction, is getting really hit a little bit in China. So we need to watch that very closely. Of course, we all know that India is now trying to overtake China in the manner of speaking, trying to aid China out of the way to become the second economy to the United States. So the struggle is out there. But once the property and the construction sector in China is dented, then you expect the rest of the economy. Now, what is the lesson? Again, if I try to bring this home, is that for a country such as Nigeria, we need to do so much very quickly around housing development for 200 million people. So the property market in Nigeria is just still like insurance market. It's just still very at its infancy. We need to build massively. We need to allow the private sector to do that. The contagion effect of housing across every sector of the economy, including food, agriculture, whatever, tech, is unbelievable. Is huge. So housing, as I said a few days ago, when you take food, including the next human need is housing, as we all know. So that housing sector is a major one that China has to watch. Investors around the world are watching how they'll be able to work their way out of this, how to ensure that that sector is not so dented in a way that it will further dent the Chinese economy. The whole world needs China to remain the dragon that it had always been. If the dragon loses its firepower, then we're all in a bit of a problem here.
Well, all eyes on Evergrande, but let's move on to this conflict between Israel and Hamas.
Yes.
Going on in Gaza, as well as the lower oil put are forecast to have very negative impacts, as you know, on the economic growth of the Middle East and North Africa. What's your take on this?
I'm surprised, and I spoke early this morning. I got a call from a very top individual in Nigeria's oil and gas sector. And the question is, what's the right price of oil right now? Some says, and he says it should be about $40 a barrel. And I said, why? And that was my question was, why is that so? He said, because we're doing about $80 a barrel right now, despite all the problems in the Middle East. 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago or thereabout, oil prices would be around $100 or $200 per barrel by now. So you've seen this conflict from Russia, Ukraine, then you've got the Israel-Hamas, then you've got the Houthi rebels, the Red Sea firing on ocean-going vessels and all of that. And oil prices is still around $80 a barrel. That means that the appetite for global oil demand is very weak as we speak. By now, you should be seeing oil prices at about 100 because a single bullet, a single shotgun fired in the entire Middle East 20, 30 years ago, oil prices will skyrocket. We've seen it in 73, we've seen it before. But now, this crisis on top of crisis are happening in the Middle East. U.S. servicemen have been impacted by the crisis in the Middle East. There's a force between the UK and U.S. trying to protect some vessels going through the Red Sea and all of that. And Iran is saber rattling and all of that. You have North Korea firing a lot of missiles into the sea and what have you. And yet oil prices hasn't moved beyond $80, $81 a barrel, 82, 83 at the most over the last few weeks. So that tells you that the appetite, the global economy is not firing on all cylinders as it had been. The demand is very weak, and again, go back to China, go back to the weakness that was seen in Europe, even though the IMF and the World Bank are saying, look, it looks like we're turning the corner, the risks are broadly balanced. But again, there's a whole lot that the world can do. For the Middle East and North African region, the crisis, they are the one at the center of this, as in a manner of speaking, because they're the ones sitting at the center of this all, both on the human casualty side of it, in terms of destruction of property, loss of life, and things of that nature. Then the rest of the world is now beginning to see the impact of the Red Sea Houthi rebels playing into logistics and trade and maritime trade. That is beginning to come in, and we can see some of those numbers are beginning to be put together to see how much this will impact everyone moving forward. So are we likely to see a bit of a pullback in the Middle East, North Africa? Yeah, you're going to see that. Suez Canal in Egypt is losing about $100 million or thereabout by some estimates, and of course that's a very iconic gateway, an economic point for Egypt. Egypt is looking at about almost $10 billion deal with the IMF, the World Bank, and other partners. There were going to be currency devaluations. They just concluded the IMF meeting today, even though it's the start of the weekend, but everyone is at work, officially speaking, to ensure that this deal is on the table. The initial figure was $3 billion. They're going to do $10 billion. So it's not so much of a rest there. You have Morocco dealing with its own issues, then you have Libya, which had always been there. Then you have Tunisia, still trying to pay some of his debt and try to be in the good books of the IMF, even though they said we don't need the IMF loan. So if you look between Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, Libya, those four major economies to the north of the continent, it's not really very easy time, as it were. So right now, I think we just wish everything go well and hope that 2024, based on those predictions we have by the World Bank and the IMF, that things stay the same, or that we have a very safe flight in 2024.
Well, amen. What do we say to that?
Well, I mean, well said. We really wish the same.
Thank you.
Arise Business Anchor, Boason Omofaye, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.
Thank you.